Muslims, Buddhists, Christians, Jews. I like the diversity. I don't want to see a world with 220 nations. I want to see a world with maybe 3,000 nations. I believe in the right to integrate, to segregate, to separate, to have linguistic, tribal nation-states emerge where there are these people, like in Africa, and I lived there for a while, where the Metabeles have been fighting the Mishonas. Let them have their own nation-states. Let that division take place. Let there be a free world alliance. Let there be a Croatia. Let there be a Serbia. Let all individuals separate and find a place that is comfortable. Let them do their own thing in their own time, in their own way. If somebody wants to be a racist, let them be a racist. Let them have a racist state. Let Israel exist. It's a religious state. It has a racist philosophy, fine. But let there be a Palestine. Let there be an independent Gaza. I would like to see the secession of Alaska. I worked there on Radio Free America for 3.5 years. I called for the independence of Alaska. It should be an independent nation.
Well, you know, when you're mentioning all this conspiracy stuff, you know, I'm thinking that, you know, when various things happen, like when the riots happened about 6 months ago,
April 29th and May 1st.
Right, and but when it happened, and when just about everything bad in our society that's happened, not just the riots, I mean, it's almost tempting to want to believe that there are people behind there pulling the strings and all that, because it creates the false sense of security that if we can just stop these people, we can have a better life, and that sort of thing.
But we can have a better life if we stop
You don't
people.
think it's just a bunch of incompetent people just making mistakes, and that maybe you're just reading things?
How could everything happen just accidentally? I mean, everything goes wrong, and it just happens to go wrong every time, everywhere, and we've been getting worse off and worse off and worse off. Ronald Reagan and George Bush, who are supposed to be conservatives, quote, conservatives, tripled the national debt. I mean, all of the debt that was acquired from George Washington through Jimmy Carter, they tripled the national debt, and then reporters get out there and say, hey, I'm thinking that these guys are conservative. They're not conservative.
Can't you just write it up to a bad economic plan instead of saying that there are people behind it?
By design.
Let me explain something to you.
Bad economic
you do
plan.
not get to be President of the United States, and you do not have hundreds of advisors, highly educated, proficient advisors in every field of activity of human endeavor, getting C2 reports every day from the CIA. You're getting USIA, DIA documentation every hour on the hour for the economy of the world, all things happening in the earth being directed to the president's table. You don't make mistakes when you become president. You have the finest minds in the world working for you, the finest intellects that the Western world can produce. That's why in a dog-eat-dog world, our country is the most powerful economic society on earth, because we are a very powerfully intellectual society. We don't make mistakes.
Well, Roosevelt put it this way: in politics, nothing happens by accident. If it happens, it was planned that way.
Right. So they planned on George Bush and Dan Quayle.
Oh, yeah.
George Bush and Dan Quayle are some of our most intelligent people working.
No, hell, no, they're not our most intelligent people, but they are conspiratorial. I mean, when you get somebody from the Skull and Bones and the Trilateral Commission, and a guy who says, everything I am today I owe to David Rockefeller, founder of the Trilateral Commission. Why is it that we don't talk about this organization? If they were members of the Nazi Party, if they were members of the Boy Scouts, or some drag queen over in West Hollywood, we would be talking about them. They would be front page headlines. But the Trilateral Commission, 78, 90 people, who controls all three candidates for the President of the United States in 1980?
We like to say in this country that we have the ability as Americans to elect. But the problem is we do not have the ability to select. We can only elect, which means that we can only vote for those candidates which are put before us by our masters, our hidden masters behind the scenes. And when you understand that the Democratic and the Republican Party are financed, and believe me, in this world, money is the bottom line. If you have it or if you don't. And the Democratic and the Republican Party are financed and organized and directed by the same banking families. The same people who finance your banks are the same people who finance your institutions of government. As a matter of fact, the word for bench in relation to a judge sitting on the bench comes from banco, which is in Latin, meaning the bank. The judge sits on the bench, which is a Latin word for the bank. He officiates for the system. So when you go into a court, you're sitting before a court of order which is actually being financed by government.
The Federal Reserve is not federal.
It has nothing to do with the
It is not a reserve.
No.
They create that fiat money that you use. It's like monopoly money. For less than a penny a note, they lend it to the U.S. Treasury in exchange for interest-bearing bonds. They print this stuff for less than a penny a note. They lend it in exchange for interest-bearing bonds. They issue this into circulation as debt-bearing currency. We cannot exist as a free and independent nation when this evilarchy controls the strings. We have to abolish the privately owned Federal Reserve System.
And that's why on the dollar bill it says up in the left-hand corner on the dollar bill, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. The reason it was put on there is because it was a piece of paper, and you have to tell the people that it's legal. You don't have to tell anyone.
It used to say, and it's redeemable in lawful money.
Yes.
Redeemable in lawful money. That meant it's not lawful money. It's
right.
not a dollar. If you have a piece of toilet paper, it can be used and tossed away. But as soon as you print Federal Reserve note, it becomes an obligation of the public to pay.
So what we're saying is that the Federal Reserve System has nothing whatsoever to do with the federal government. Just like federal vacuum cleaners and federated department stores has nothing to do with, it's a word. It is a play on words. A Federal Reserve System is a private banking institution with most of its holders.
The Class A stockholders have never been revealed to the United States public. There's never been an audit.
Right, never been an audit.
Independent audit.
This organization, okay, that you say is pulling strings here. How many people are controlling this? Is this at the helm of one man, or is
it's an oligarchy? And I call it an evilarchy because they want to bring about a Luciferian new world order.
And by Luciferian,
we're talking about.
Do you mean?
I'm talking about a satanic order. And if you take a look at the layout of Washington, D.C., and Jordan Maxwell is the expert on this, you will find out that the entire city was laid out in symbols. If you take a look at the obelisk and the Illuminati pyramid at the top of the
yes, as a matter of fact, the two main streets going toward the Capitol building, if you take, which I have pictures over the city, looking down on Washington, D.C., you'll see there are two main boulevards culminating in a pyramid. And just at the very top of the pyramid is a street cutting it off. And then within the triangle at the top, where the eye on the dollar bill is the Capitol. And the Capitol building sits there. It's a pyramid. Then it has the Cleopatra's Needle, which is a Washington monument, and the river, the long riverway, and the long waterway is called the River Styx, which is where Pharaoh went into heaven on the River Styx. It is all laid out in Masonic symbolism, and the five-pointed star, which is a pentagram, has always been used. Satan worship, satanic worship, the five-pointed pentagram, and if you take the arms off of a pentagram, you have a pentagon, and the United States Pentagon is sitting exactly due north, aiming due north at the North Star Thuban, which is drawing power, according to the ancient Egyptians, for the god of war.
It's the same pentagram that was on the Night Stalker's hand.
Right. Now, I'm trying to get an angle.
Satanic ritual killings.
I'm trying to get an angle, though, on what exactly you mean by Satanism. Are you referring, or satanic, do you mean the elevation of human reason, or do you, the strong survive, or do you mean a group of people who are actually worshiping a bona fide spiritual
We're talking about the warlocks of Washington here. We're talking about people who have satanic rituals. We're talking about people who believe in a Lucifer 2000. We're talking about the creation of a new world order and a millennium. When George Bush talks about 1,000 points of light, what do you think he's talking about, 1,000 points of light? Could it be 1,000-year millennium under Lucifer? What do you think, Jordan?
Yes, there's no doubt in my mind that all the terminology is the same. If you go back to the speeches that Adolf Hitler made and the top Nazi speechwriters, and then listen to what Ronald Reagan had to say, and George Bush, and now our new incoming president.
Well, Hitler talked about 1,000 points of, he's talked about 1,000-year Reich, and Bush is talking about 1,000 points of light.
No.
And I don't think it's just a coincidence that Adolf Hitler's second book is
not points of light.
And his term, Bush's
New World Order,
1,000 points of light. 1,000 points of light. Light is very important to Luciferians. It has to do with Lucifer. It has to do with satanic societies. And what we're saying here is that the government of the United States is in the hands of some very powerful, sinister people who are manipulating not only us, but the rest of the world.
If you can take a look at just take a road map of Washington, D.C. Just take a look at it from the air, and you'll see what appears to be the goat of Mendez. And the goat of Mendez,
which is a symbol in Freemasonry. Right. It's a symbol. It's a demonic symbol within the Freemasonic.
You see the goat and the horns and the whole thing. The whole city is laid out like that. It's all over.
So what we're basically saying here is that there is nothing happening by chance. As I brought out before, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg with their Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And the Last Crusade is for the Holy Grail, the Cup of Christ. It's not by chance that we have movies like that, because they're in. Why is Adolf Hitler always involved with Indiana Jones? The Last Crusade you can't understand unless you understand the First Crusade. The First Crusade was developed by what we call the Knights Templars Masonic Lodge. The Knights Templars are the ones that gave us what we call the Columbian faction of the Illuminati, which comes to America and founds itself in the state of New York, which comes from the old York Rite in England, from the Duke of York to old York, England, to New York, the Empire State. Then if you understand that Europe has dominated the world for almost 1,600 years, and we refer to Europe as the Old World. Therefore, the power structure of Europe is the Old World Order. That's the power structure of the Old World.
We're going to be doing some more of this. George Bush is gone, but is the New World Order gone? That's kind of what we were talking about on our last show with our guest, Anthony J. Hilder from Radio Free World, and Jordan Maxwell, a social historian. And Jordan, the last time we were talking, we talked about the Illuminati and various conspiracies and all. You wanted to talk about the difference between the Old World Order and the New World Order.
Right. We're hearing this term, New World Order, and our troops are in the Middle East because of something called a New World Order. I just wanted to bring to your attention the reason for that term. Europe is referred to as the Old World, and the power structure of the Old World was referred to as the Old World Order. I mean, the old Romanov dynasties, the Rothschilds of England, the banking dynasties throughout Europe, and the whole power structure of what we call Europe was the European Old World Order, and it dominated the world for almost 1,600 years. Europe has dominated the world. But with the coming of America, or Cristo Columbia, the founding of America, we now are in what we call the New World. Consequently, there is a new